Welcome to my quick tip about how I mount my watercolor paper when I paint. This is a question that I'm often asked. I work on 140-pound cold press watercolor paper, and I think there's a belief that you have to go through great pains in order to keep your paper from buckling if you're going to work on that surface. As you can see in this painting here, this painting is a buildup of many fluid washes. And here where I use a spray bottle, the paper is going through a process of constantly being soaked and then dried. And this is a quarter sheet. I really don't have any problems with the buckling in this application. And here's another painting. This is a full sheet watercolor, and you can see where I'm using the spray bottle again, and you can see where I've applied some of these very fluid washes early on. And I continue to do that through the painting process. And again, it's just no problem buckling with the process that I use. And here's another one. Again, you can see how fluid the wash is, but this is a quarter sheet, and really no problem with buckling on this application either. Well, I know there's a number of ways out there that people mount their paper. They go to great lengths to stretch it, soak it, do all kinds of little tricks to try and keep it from buckling. But I'm probably going to disappoint because mine's a pretty basic process. I tape dry paper to my board with masking tape. And I work on this gator board, which is very lightweight, but it's very rigid, and it stays very flat. It doesn't warp at all. I use masking tape, and I will say that the performance of the masking tape does vary from brand to brand, so you have to test that out a little bit. And I use this little wooden roller that's a seam roller for wallpaper. Here I am putting a quarter sheet of 140-pound cold press Lannaquarel watercolor paper. Lannaquarel is what I work on almost all the time. And I've got 1-inch masking tape. And the performance of masking tape does vary, so I do have to experiment from time to time if I get a roll that doesn't seem to be sticking as well as I'd like. And I put the tape on the longest dimension first to try and flatten it out. And when I smooth it with my finger here, because of the thickness of the paper, the tape's kind of at two different levels. So I smooth it on the paper, then I smooth the edge that's on the board. And then I go to the shorter dimension. When I mount a full sheet of watercolor paper, the board's much bigger and the paper's much bigger, and I often put a weight in the center to make sure it flattens out nicely while I mount the paper. But the paper is dry. I haven't done anything to it. I'm just mounting it to this gator board with masking tape. Once I have the tape down, I take my roller, and again I roll the edge that's on the paper, and then I drop it to the outer part of the tape and roll the edge of the tape that's on the board, because there is a difference in height. There's a step down because of that paper thickness. I just rotate it around, roll it down, so I make sure I do all sides. And that's it. As I said, I really have little trouble with buckling as I paint and using my process. I do dry my paper frequently as I paint. I wet it, and when it reaches a point where I can't paint any longer, I dry it, and I dry it until it's completely flat. And then I repeat that process several times as I complete a painting. But there are exceptions to everything, and when I do have a piece of paper that for some reason doesn't want to quite go flat like I want, I'll remove that off the board. I'll lightly mist the back of the paper to get the back wet, and then I put the paper down with a little weight on it. I tape it back to the board, and then I mist the front of the paper, and then I dry it with a hairdryer, and it normally flattens right back out. But I really don't have to do that very often. So I tape dry paper to my board with masking tape 98% of the time. There have been rare occasions when I've decided to staple my paper to my gator board. And the only time I've done that is on a full sheet, and it's been in a situation where I feel that I'm really going to soak the paper to start with big fluid washes with lots of water. and I don't stretch or anything, but I use staples instead of tape, and I'll staple it. And now this is a quarter sheet still. I don't ever really staple quarter sheets, but for demonstration purposes, that's what I'm going to do here. And this gator board does a good job of receiving staples. It holds them very securely. And you can see I've placed a staple in the center along each edge. And then I start to work my way out. And then I just keep rotating it 180 degrees to get the other side. And then I do this just to make sure that the paper is flattening as I go away from the center of that edge. I will say that this gator board is a very workable surface. It's, as I said, it's light. It doesn't warp. If you try to bend it, it'll break in half, I think, before it bends at all. And you can staple it many times, and it holds up quite well. And you can see this board has been used quite a bit. And I normally keep 5 or so boards with paper on, and I work on multiple paintings at one time. I'll work on one, I'll take a break and work on another. So those are the two methods I use to attach my paper to my board. As I said, 95% of the time I just tape it to my board with masking tape, and this is what works for me. If you have questions about this or anything else, you can always email me at contact@rsurwitzart@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.